Hey guys, Omni here. THR dropped some exclusive juicy news regarding the upcoming third outing of Tom Holland's Spider-Man in the MCU. And it definitely confirms some things that I think we know have been happening behind the scenes, as well as the direction the MCU seems to be going in anyway. And that is, they just announced that Jamie Foxx will be returning as Electro to face off in the same film as Tom Holland's Spider-Man. Now, this isn't the first time this happened. Of course, we saw J.K. Simmons return in his iconic role of J. Jonah Jameson in Far From Home, who we originally saw him and made such an impact in the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man films, come back into the MCU, reprising that character, and nobody really batted an eye. We was like, all right, that's one of those people you don't recast, you know? And then maybe that's all it was, or maybe there's a little more to it, because as we already know, that Jamie Foxx was already Electro in the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies in Amazing Spider-Man 2. So this is the second person to appear in a different iteration of the character as the exact same character coming over into this. Now, in Far From Home, we of course had Mysterio, Jake Gyllenhaal coming around spouting out these lies about Earth 616, the multiverse, and him being from another Earth and all that stuff, and it just being hoo-ha that he was spitting out there. But as we know from Avengers Endgame and Infinity War, that there is now a multiverse. And we even know further that this is the direction that the MCU is going to be going in as well, for exploring different iterations of the characters with the What If series. And then we also know that the upcoming WandaVision has some tie-in to Doctor Strange's film, The Multiverse of Madness. So, we know the direction they've been going in. Now, some things that have been going on behind the scenes that we haven't really been... We've been seeing some nuggets of it coming up here and there, and Morbius was the first real concrete thing that we saw this happening in, because there's been some... When the talks and renegotiations between Sony and Marvel came back together for what to do with Spider-Man, since Sony still owns the rights to the Spider-Man, but Disney and Marvel still want to have Tom Holland in their stuff. But Sony wants to play around with Spider-Man more. So there's a lot of back and forth and a lot of evidence going around, a lot of speculation that the MCU and the Sony SpiderVerse, because they were going to be spinning off their Spider-Man stuff into their whole own thing, like separate from the MCU, while Tom Holland would bounce in between the others. And now it's starting to seem like that they are interweaving them completely, because we're getting this multiverse spin, and we're seeing J.K. Simmons returning into the role. Now, who knows when Multiverse of Madness is going to take place, how far after Endgame that it's going to take place. It could happen before we even see Peter in Far From Home, and maybe some things have already started to started to change, started to shift in what we know of the MCU. This merging of storylines, of characters, of things that have happened and haven't happened, get weaved and unweaved, as we know also in WandaVision, which is definitely setting up a House of M storyline, in which Wanda will basically, more than likely, recreate the world through some act with her powers, her abilities, her reality warping powers, which a lot of people speculate is going to be the way that this universe, the MCU, gets mutants, because at this point in time, there are none. And the theory, at least the working theory, is that it will also bring out the creation of the mutants, or she'll rewrite reality in the way that the mutants have already been there. Maybe she'll create a new timeline or whatever, recreate just whatever's been going on in the MCU, restructure some things, bring her brother back, bring other people back, and then maybe this amalgamation, whatever happens between her journey with Doctor Strange into the Multiverse of Madness following WandaVision, we get some further melding. Maybe it's just a crossover. Maybe he just comes over from the multiverse and into this movie, or maybe we're going to be seeing some people reprising their roles in a part where they feel like they've already been a part of this world, and he's just, again, the face of Electro in the Earth 616 in the MCU. He just happens to look like the one from the Amazing Spider-Man. Or what if we go even farther And we get this rumored crossover that they've been talking about that's been pitched and shot down repeatedly about bringing in the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man or Andrew Garfield Spider-Man and Tom Holland's into a singular journey. Spider-Verse definitely opened the doors to that. Multiverse of Madness can be opening the doors to that, as they also have Evan Peters reprising a separate role, or at least we don't know what his role is going to be, but that he will be reprising, or he'll have a role in the upcoming WandaVision series. And of course, he played Quicksilver in the Foxx iteration of the X-Men, while we had a completely different person, Aaron Taylor Johnson, playing him in the MCU. So we're getting a lot of this mix and matches of people who've played around in this. Now that Disney owns all of those different fragments, except for the Sony pieces, it seems like Sony is definitely willing to play the ball to have Spider-Man in and out of this, because we see in Morbius that we have Michael Keaton showing up with Morbius. Of course, Vulture from Homecoming. And further tie-ins and hints that Tom Holland might be facing off with Venom. Tom Hardy's Venom. They might be crossing over with that. There's a lot of things that are floating around. And if this report is true, we're definitely seeing some multiverse shenanigans. Either he's the Electro from the Andrew Garfield timeline, or he is this world's Electro, and he's just also played by Jamie Foxx. Just like J.K. Simmons just happens to be playing this version of J. Jonah Jameson. Or something happens with Wanda and her adventures with Doctor Strange, and things get mixed and matched. The best bits of these different elements from abandoned projects that no longer exist, like the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, maybe, Jamie Foxx continues to be a very well sought after actor, so why not bring him in? People loved J.K. Simmons, so why not meddle with the timelines, get him into our universe? People really like the Evan Peters Quicksilver a lot more than the MCU version. Bring him in. Combine them all. Get Venom in there. Get the symbiote onto Tom. Have him screw around. Do some awesome stuff. Who knows? It could just be blown out of proportion. It just could be. Why not? We'll just have him give it another shot. He'll play a different version of Electro completely. I don't know. It's just really interesting. It opens the doors to so many different theories, so many webs you can really kind of take it in. It just gets me excited. I don't know why. I like multiverse stuff. I like when people interact with alternate versions of themselves. And maybe that comes from my DC roots, that I just love playing around with that. Crisis on Infinite Earths is one of my favorite storylines. And even though it didn't quite live up to the comic book hype, I loved what they did in the CW with the Arrowverse. DC's been playing around with the multiverse on live action for quite some time. Whether you hate it or love it, it's a lot of fun. I think it's a lot of great comic book fun. And it's it frees you of your canon. It frees you of being trapped in a specific iteration of a character. It also frees you from being committed to a character or a timeline or something that just didn't pan out, and gives you an out. Now, that could be lazy, but seen as lazy by a lot of people, and a lot of people do feel that way about how the multiverse is handled in both Marvel and DC in the comics. So there's probably going to be some mixed reactions about this regardless, but it excites me for sure, because I think that was one of the fun things about Into the Spider-Verse that was so much fun. And Spider-Man's my favorite MCU character, so playing around with that and getting to experiment with it definitely it gets me excited. And I haven't felt extremely excited for anything post Endgame really, till this WandaVision trailer and this the more news we get about Tom Holland stuff, because Tom Holland stuff with the Spider-Man stuff has really been the big thing that I've been kind of latched onto. Now that, this big overarching story for the last 10 years has really come to an end. And right now, where the MCU is going right now is just one big question mark. I have full faith that they might be able to build us back up, but right now we're still waiting for that endurance to come back. So I don't know. I'm hyped up. I'm really excited to see how that goes. Do you think it's the same Electro? Do you think it's an alternate reality version of, well, obviously it's a different reality than the MCU. What do you think they're doing here? What do you think this opens the door to? What's your speculations about this news? Let's talk about this down in the comments because we could ramble on about this for probably hours. So let's carry on the conversation after the video down in the comments. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'm excited, guys. I'll catch you guys next time. Take care, everybody.